Hello, America. Mark Levin. Our number is 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Man, I'm glad you're here. We've got a lot to discuss. And I have to decide what comes first, and so here we go. The election, the virus. I'm going to pick the election first. The media are so corrupt, so vile, so partisan, and utterly stupid. You just don't get the news and the facts from the media. All you get every day now is that the president won't concede. The president said he won. For most of you, you know there are cases swirling around, but you don't know exactly what cases are swirling around, exactly what the arguments are, and who's saying what. You're just being told it's all frivolous, and there's no way out. Wouldn't it be helpful for you to draw your own conclusions and get the facts of the various cases? Even when you rely on some of these legal analysts, they have no idea what they're talking about. They've gone Hollywood too, even some of my former friends. They have no idea what they're talking about. And I spoke at length behind this microphone over the course of weeks, and have spoke at length on Fox on my show last night. Let me tell you, this case in Pennsylvania, I know the lawyers who are working on this case. They're great lawyers. One of them is my wife. I know the lawyers who are providing constitutional advice on this case. One of them is behind this microphone. Now, I told you about this several weeks ago, and I told you this was an important case. If the Supreme Court decides to give it 14 seconds attention and then blow it out, that doesn't mean it's not an important case. There's a lot of important cases that go to the Supreme Court that deserve better than the Supreme Court gives them. So you can't control the outcomes. And there are people out there who are gleeful when we lose cases, including important cases. This case in Pennsylvania is not being explained by the press. All they say is that the petitioners litigating this case want to disenfranchise 2.6 million people who voted by mail-in ballot. That's not what's going on here. Now, Ted Cruz has asked that if the case goes to oral argument for a hearing before the Supreme Court, I doubt it would, given the timelines, but if it does, he'd like to argue the case. The petitioners have said yes. And I think that would be great. Can you think of a better advocate? I can't. But I suspect this will be decided on the filings. But who knows? The other thing that's very frustrating is how people write and surmise. What is Justice Alito up to? I have no idea what Justice Alito is up to. I hope he's up to upholding the United States Constitution. Now, without going through the weeds and the detail of this case again, let me put it to you this way. The bottom line here is whether or not we are a nation that believes in our constitutional system or not. Not the number of voters, not who the voters are, but if we believe in our constitutional system or not. We're all obviously on a glide path in a post-constitutional republic. That's the glide path. The question is whether the United States Supreme Court is going to participate in this or step up. This is one of those cases. This is a seminal case. I can't speak to the other cases. I'm not as nearly informed about the other cases. But this is one of those cases, and let me tell you why. When our framers met in Philadelphia, they spent 5.5 months there trying to figure out how to create a republic and keep a republic. The Democrats are trying to figure out how to create a utopia, which is really a hell on earth, and how to destroy a republic and replace it with a people's regime, and you've heard of those before. A people's regime. In other words, an autocratic, iron-fisted society where there's uniformity and conformity. This case relates to all of that. You know, many of us support federalism. We say, okay, what the state does, you know, we want to defend it and so forth. Well, of course we want to defend it when it deserves defending. But if a state legislature, regardless of party control, intentionally violates its own constitution for the purpose of influencing the outcome of elections at the federal level, that's unacceptable. I don't care what party controls the state legislature. My friend John Eastman is a professor. He's a brilliant man. He says they're given plenary power under Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. Plenary power means they get to run the table. But they don't get to run off the table. The framers were believers in their state constitutions. They were creating a federal constitution. Can anybody here imagine that they would create a federal constitution that tells the states, you have plenary power and that includes unlawful power? So you need to use common sense. You need to use some experience, some understanding of the founding of this nation. Plenary power is broad power within the confines of the law. If the Pennsylvania legislature were controlled by all Democrats, and they passed election laws that said only Democrats can win elections, I think we'd all agree that that's outrageous and unconstitutional, would we not, Mr. Producer? So there are limits. And if the Supreme Court doesn't draw a line here, I'm predicting to you right now, and I'm not even in the prediction business, there will be no end to this. It'll get worse and worse and worse and worse. The more powerful a single party is in a state, the more they will distance themselves from a lawful election process. We're already moving down that road. And for those who say, well, what's the federal question? The Supreme Court's reaching into the states? The Constitution doesn't prevent the Supreme Court from reaching into the states, depending on the facts and the circumstances. And it certainly doesn't prevent the Supreme Court from reaching into the states when the states are reaching into the federal government. If a state is conducting itself in a certain way that's unlawful under its own laws to influence the outcome of the federal presidential and vice presidential elections, if that's not a super-duper federal question, I don't know what is. And I don't even mean influence it Republican, Democrat. I mean poison it, effect it. So it's easy to say we don't want to disenfranchise 2.6 million people. So I have come on this program, I've gone on TV, I've posted on my social sites. If the Supreme Court fears the outcome of upholding both the federal Constitution and by upholding the federal Constitution, actually doing the people of Pennsylvania a favor by upholding their Constitution, if they fear the consequences of that, by selecting a remedy, then don't select a remedy. Just rule that it is unconstitutional for the obvious reasons. I mean, the reasons, I'll punch you right in the nose, they're so obvious. But we are going to leave it to the political branches to fashion a remedy. Whether the state legislature, which is out, has to come in an emergency session, or Congress has to sort it out, the state legislature created this problem. The state created this problem. Let the state figure out how to resolve it. But the court must resolve the constitutional question. Resolve the constitutional question. And it must resolve it the right way. None of these games that were put out by the Democrats that have ruined the state Supreme Court and have eviscerated the state Constitution and in turn parts of the federal Constitution. We can't have a rogue state Supreme Court being the tail that wags the dog, or we'll have scores of rogue Supreme Courts in the states that poison the system, that destroy the integrity of the system. Yes, state legislatures, you have plenary power. But there is a bridge too far. The people of Pennsylvania were actually disenfranchised at the front end. Under their Constitution, they get to vote on amendments to their Constitution. And under their Constitution, when you change the election laws, it has to be done by amendment. And to make matters worse, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which is elected, the justices on that court have abused their power like few others. It's as if you're in the Soviet Union with one-party rule, or California. They take an unconstitutional act, and then they conduct themselves in an unconstitutional way. Under the same article, Article 2. They take it, and they add to it. Shortly before the general election, they're changing it, they're rewriting it. How the Supreme Court can bypass this or ignore it or rule the wrong way, especially after Bush versus Gore in 2000, would be shocking to me. Shocking. If this isn't fixed at this stage, it's never going to be fixed. And they will be encouraging lawlessness as long as this country survives. That court finds a federal issue in 1,000 different ways where no federal issue exists. You have to work hard. You have to work hard not to find a federal issue here. You have to work hard to do what the state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania did, which is violate all norms and come up with a cockamamie latches argument, a process argument. Well, they crushed the lower appellate court where that judge was prepared to conduct a hearing, put in place an injunction in which she said the petitioners are more than likely to succeed on the merits. That's what she said, and she was right. And she was right. Just so you know, there are members of Congress who are friends of mine who don't want to get involved in this. I want you to know Ted Cruz really is a stand-up guy. He sees this case for what it is. He's offered his services should there be oral argument. I can't think of a better, more superb Supreme Court advocate if there's oral argument, which likely not to be, but what do I know? But there are individuals in the Senate and the House who would shock you, who claim to be constitutionalists, who vote against all kinds of stuff claiming to be constitutional, but this one has them nervous, frightened even, because they don't want to be accused, because the headlines of the media, of disenfranchising 2.6 million people. Instead, they'd rather disenfranchise over 6 million people. But they needn't be afraid. I've given them an out. I've told them right here behind this microphone. You don't have to fashion a remedy, but at least stand up for the Constitution, for God's sakes. They won't do it. And I won't forget. And I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.